Welcome to O-Level Oasis. Together, we're on the journey to mastering O-Level English Language. 1123. We'll begin by learning how to confidently tackle Paper 1, the reading paper. But before we get into that, let's first understand a few important basics. Before you start practicing questions, it is very important that you know exactly what the exam looks like and what the examiner expects from you. Once you understand the paper pattern, preparing for the exam becomes much easier because you know what skills you need to develop. Let's start with Paper 1, which is your reading paper. This paper is 2 hours long, carries 50 marks, and is worth 50% of your final grade. It contains structured and extended writing questions, and all the questions are based on 2 reading texts. This paper is also externally assessed, which means your answers are marked by Cambridge examiners. Now, let's see what your syllabus tells you about this paper. In Paper 1, Reading, you answer all the questions in 2 compulsory sections. You write your answers directly in the spaces provided on the question paper, while the reading passages are printed in a separate insert. One important thing to remember is that dictionaries are not allowed during the examination, so you must learn to understand words from their context. Your syllabus also explains the reading skills that you are expected to develop. First of all, you should be able to understand written texts, including both individual words and complete phrases. You should also learn how to summarize information and use it for a specific purpose. Another important skill is being able to develop, analyze and evaluate facts, ideas and opinions instead of simply identifying them. You are also expected to understand how writers achieve different effects and influence their readers through their choice of language. This means you should notice why the writer chooses certain words, images or expressions and what impact they have. In addition, you should be able to select the correct information for a particular purpose and recognize different language features such as figurative language, imagery and other literary devices. To become a stronger reader, your syllabus encourages you to read a wide variety of texts from the 20th and 21st centuries. These include fiction, nonfiction, blogs, articles, essays, reviews, short stories, and extracts from longer novels or plays. As you read, you should pay close attention to the writer's language, style, ideas, opinions, perspectives, and even possible bias. Now let's look at the assessment objectives. These are the exact skills Cambridge uses to mark your reading paper. You should be able to understand information that is directly stated, understand hidden meanings and attitudes, analyze and evaluate facts, ideas and opinions using evidence from the passage, explain how writers create effects and influence readers, and finally select the correct information for a specific purpose. So basically, what all of this means is that Paper 1 is not simply testing whether you can read English. It is testing whether you can understand the passage deeply, think about what the writer is trying to say, explain the writer's language choices, and use information correctly to answer different types of questions. First we have Section A. Section A is called Comprehension and Use of Language, and it carries 25 marks. This section is based on Text A, which is usually a narrative passage. It is divided into 2 parts. The first question is the comprehension question, worth 16 marks. Half of these marks test your understanding of explicit meanings, which are ideas that are directly written in the passage. The other half test your understanding of implicit meanings and attitudes, where you have to read between the lines to work out hidden meanings, feelings, opinions, and emotions. The second question is worth 9 marks and focuses on the writer's language and effects. Here, you explain why the writer has chosen certain words or phrases and how those language choices create particular effects on the reader. So, what exactly does Section A test? First, it checks your literal comprehension, meaning your ability to understand information that is clearly stated. Next, it tests your inference skills, where you use clues from the passage to work out ideas that are implied rather than directly stated. You will also analyze the writer's language, looking carefully at the vocabulary and descriptive techniques used throughout the passage. Sometimes you will need to explain the meaning of words according to their context, rather than giving a dictionary definition. Another important skill is identifying the writer's purpose. You should understand whether the writer wants to inform, describe, entertain, or persuade the reader. Finally, you must explain the writer's effect, showing how particular words, phrases, and language techniques influence the reader. To perform well in Section A, there are several important skills you should develop. First, always read the passage carefully so that you fully understand the events, characters, and ideas before attempting any questions. Learn to identify explicit information quickly, but also practice reading between the lines to understand implied meanings, emotions, and attitudes. You should also become confident at analyzing language, explaining how the writer's choice of words and sentence structures creates meaning and produces different effects. Learn to recognize literary devices and always explain why the writer has used them instead of simply naming them. Another essential skill is understanding vocabulary in context. Remember, words often have different meanings depending on how they are used in the passage. Finally, whenever the question asks you to answer in your own words, make sure you paraphrase instead of copying directly from the text. Now let's move on to Section B. Section B is called Reading into Writing, and it also carries 25 marks. This section is based on Text B, which is usually a factual or informational passage. The first task is summary writing, worth 20 marks. You will write a summary of approximately 150 words in one continuous paragraph. Your summary should include only the information asked for in the question, and you should use your own words as much as possible rather than copying directly from the passage. The second task is a short response, worth 5 marks. In this question, you respond as the expert or person mentioned in the task. Your response should be logical, well-developed and fully explained. So, what does Section B actually test? The summary question checks whether you can select the correct information, organize it logically, combine similar ideas and express them clearly using your own words. The short response question tests whether you can respond appropriately to a given situation by expressing a clear viewpoint and supporting your ideas with suitable explanations. To succeed in Section B, you should first read the factual passage carefully and identify only the information relevant to the summary. Avoid including unnecessary details. Next, understand the explicit information presented in the passage and extract the required factual points accurately. Then, organize these key ideas into a clear, concise, and logical summary while staying within the given word limit. Finally, express the writer's ideas in your own words by paraphrasing accurately, making sure you preserve the original meaning and avoid unnecessary copying from the passage. In the same way, from the passage, you will learn how to identify the required information and answer the short response questions accurately and confidently. And this is how we will work through the entire reading paper, tackling each question one by one until you are confident in every section of the exam.